Today, as Christians, we pay tithe, we make offerings, but many times we pay tithe and offerings with wrong intentions. We think that we are in a casino and that we are investing and God will make us millionaires. And when we don't get the millions, we get disappointed. And we who are here as professionals today, it is a day to interrogate ourselves, to ask ourselves questions wherever we are, whether we can pass the litmus test. Suppose there was to be a rapture today, that Christ were to come today, on the basis of the criteria that is provided in the Bible, would you get to heaven? Ask yourself that question. It is not the number of services that you attend every year. It is not the tithes and offerings that you pay. Would you get to heaven by your very actions? And this is what makes me make reference to the story of the Good Samaritan, recorded in the book of Luke, as I said a little earlier, chapter 10, verses 29 through to 37. And Christ was answering what was essentially a very simple question. Who is your neighbor? That was the question that was posed. And who is your neighbor? It would have been possible for him to say that your neighbor is he or she who lives next to you. But he did not answer in that way. He said, there was a man who was traveling that road, that dangerous road, and he was ambushed by robbers. And when he lay there dying, a Levite passed. Levites, we are latter-day Levites. They did nothing. Another believer passed, did nothing. And then there came a Samaritan. And in order to understand the context of this story, you must understand the status of the Samaritans during the times when Christ walked on the surface of this earth. And this Good Samaritan, we now call him the Good Samaritan, said, he took care of him and went to the inn and said, take care of him. And if there is any additional expense, you tell me. Today, courtesy of his actions, we say he was a good Samaritan. How many of you professionals here have found yourselves in situations where you could have been a good Samaritan, but you are not? How many of you here who are lawyers in government institutions, who when called upon to do that which is good and right, you seek to be bribed first? How many of you here, I'm not asking you to raise your hands, but I'm asking you to inspect your heart. How many of you here who are doctors, upon whom it fell to save life and asked many questions, irrelevant questions, and lives were lost? How many of you here are engineers who compromise the standards and qualities of our roads that you may become rich? How many of you? How many of you who are reporters here who will distort what we are saying today. How many of you? Because when you find yourself in any situation where your acts or omissions can harm another, that other is your neighbor. This is the message. So, as to who is your neighbor changes from time to time, but your conduct must never change. In other words, as professionals, we must make painful choices. You know, many times I listen to fellow Christians and they say, I love the Lord, and I do not begrudge them. I'm not in the business of begrudging them, because they have their duty and right to love the Lord. But a few minutes later, when they are driving on the road, they do not love the other motorists. And I said, how can they possibly be conducting themselves in a manner that could lead to the death of the other motorists, and then they say they love the Lord? In John 1, you are told that you are a liar if you are such a one as that. And you know, in this country, when we say there is corruption or evil, all these other things, who are the midwives of corruption in this country? Professionals. We are the midwives. Look at any institution that is collapsing or has collapsed. Who has presided over the collapse of such institutions? Is it not us who are professionals? Do we make the right choices when we are called upon to make the right choices? Whom do we worship? Do we worship Mammon or God? Do we obey the law when it is inconvenient to us? When I read the story of the Israelites as they moved from Egypt through the desert for 40 years to the promised land, and it has been dramatized in modern times. I do not know whether you watch movies. If you do, good. If you don't, I urge you to. And there is one movie which is a dramatization of that event that I want you to watch. And I'm citing this movie so that I may make reference to the verse that I talked about in the book of the prophet Joshua. It is a movie that was produced in 1956. It's called The Ten Commandments. How many have watched it? If you've watched the Ten Commandments, you can understand how weak we are as human beings. For 400 years, the Israelites were praying to God, generation after generation, to free them from slavery. But once they are freed from slavery, their conduct is completely that of ungrateful individuals. And if you read and watch that movie alongside the Bible, you will know that there are certain things that are extra biblical, but other things that are biblical. But the ones that are biblical are the ones that I want to make reference to. When Moses goes up into the mountain and he leaves Aaron his brother and Miriam the sister, After only a few days, the Israelites say they want a God that they can see. And they make unto themselves an image of a calf. The sons of Korah are there. Dathan is there. And they have persuaded the people to rebel against God. And when he comes down now in the dramatization, he comes down with the tablets of the law, and the people have rebelled. And one of them, I think it is Korah, who says, you have made unto yourselves laws that you may become a prince over us. We are free. But Moses says, no, there is no freedom outside of the law. Freedom must be within the law. And that is why, therefore, as professionals, we must be bound by certain ethics. We must have certain taboos, the things that we do not do, and the things that we do. And these taboos are the ones that will prevent us from doing things that are not in the best interest of our country and our society. In other words, as professionals, we are enjoined to make choices. But which choices do we make?